Okay, it's Chief Yuya, and we are smack dab in the middle of a zombie apocalypse. So, I've been reading about some very interesting things that have been happening in other countries throughout the world in terms of some of the responses. One of the things that I had mentioned a while ago was, just different speculations about what the responses would be to maybe someone who steps outside of what their local or state or federal government, advises or mandates in terms of how they should physically situate themselves. And I'm seeing some instances in different countries, from the Philippines to Nepal, to Brazil, where people, like in the Philippines, in certain provinces, there's instructions that they'll be shot if they step outside after the allotted time that they're supposed to be outdoors. There's also people being put in cages in certain countries. And I found a very interesting piece in terms of like the ability to physically. There's different applications that are being offered on phones, which offer the ability to position different individuals to really map their positioning. And I found that interesting because in one country they're able to use, and they're utilizing it. They're able to create like a grid of sorts using these apps, and in doing that, they can see who steps outside of the grid. So essentially, what they're calling it is an electronic fence, right? And they're able to use the Wi-Fi and the GPS positioning that's being utilized by these different apps to be able to create an actual like perimeter. So it's like you're fencing yourself in. All right. So we're in an interesting time. We're in an interesting time, and like I said, there's never a situation that may come that is going to go to waste, right? Never a situation that's going to go to waste. I would say that now is a time when people can really maybe take advantage of things that they haven't before, in terms of really getting back to a simpler way of being. If you've had thoughts and ideas and maybe even some questions about, can I really maybe rid myself and cleanse myself and purge myself of some of the things that I've thought I've needed for so long, and maybe live in a way where I can protect a little bit more of my own personal space and some of my own personal boundaries. Because as so many people are fascinated by the idea of having a small little electronic RFID or electronic device installed inside of them, and having themselves cyber enhanced with something like that. The reality is, just with the download of one application, it performs all those functions anyway. So, like I've often said, between your plastic spending cards, which have chips, and your communication devices, a lot of times you may not realize that you've already received that thing that you're speculating about. If you tell me that there's now an app that can not only let me know who's around me, but let others know where I am. In some countries, for instance, in Switzerland, I believe it's Switzerland, they have this selfie program where if you say that you are maintaining yourself inside of your domicile, when the policy agents come to your home, you have 20 minutes to provide a selfie picture to show that you are in your home, or some detainments may be instituted. So like I said, we're just in a very interesting time now, and I would strongly urge all of my people to not download and install any kind of positioning application. I know it may be tempting because people are very interested and very hopeful about things returning to a state of normalcy, and I can relate to that. I mean, this is a very uncomfortable situation for many, and scary for many, of course. But it's important to understand that there's something so much deeper happening right now. Really, the motivation for me even speaking right now is something I had been noticing that I was very, very pleased with. I have been noticing across certain social media platforms among males and maybe some men as well. And I'm noticing that many men or males, or maybe these males are coming into their manhood, they are now sacrificing some of the aesthetic quality and the aesthetic structuring and formation that maybe trending culture has suggested, and they're not only growing their beards, but they're also even allowing their natural color of hair to show in those beards. And I saw that with several high-profile celebrities. I thought that was a great thing, and I knew that it also is a very spiritual thing. It's a very spiritual thing when men, more reminders, but it's a very spiritual thing when men allow themselves to appear as men again and allow that distinction, and that contouring of masculinity to not spill over into the contouring of the aesthetic femininity, or even strive to look like women, which is that's a reality of something that happens when they remove themselves from that whole carnival, we'll say. So I had been noticing that, not only just with the beards, but even with the colors, and of course there's been some joke memes about it. People have found an opportunity in that to ridicule these men without realizing that maybe they know something that you may not be aware of. It made me think about there's a tradition that's spoken about in the Talmud, and it's spoken about, and this goes to the Kabbalistic studies. It was during that time that when we talk about that season, that it was about 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva. They died of the plague, and those deaths, or that plague, went on for about 33 days. And it's celebrated usually about 40, or commemorated for about 49 days, so almost 50 days, but 49 days. But they had the deaths that went on for 33 days. It was a plague, and it was considered, because it happened, it was said, because of the way they treated one another. In fact, the words that are used when you read the Talmud is that they disregarded each other. Because of the way they disregarded one another, they brought a plague to themselves, and 24,000 people died over the course of 33 days. So this is where you get the hair restrictions in that sense, in the Talmud. So I think about that, and I look at that, and then I look at some of the things that are happening now, and I can't really speak for the women because I'm not on social media enough. Maybe some of you will know better than I as to if maybe some of the makeup is, maybe some of the layers at least, are coming off. Maybe not a full peeling is happening. I don't know, but maybe some of the layers are coming off, or maybe we're seeing more naturalness in the hair, or maybe the hair is being covered as it should be. I'm not sure. I'm not on it enough. But I do know, I have noticed that trend among certain notable men or males, and I thought it was quite significant Um, you know, there's a very let me see. I'm sorry. Um, there's a very interesting thing that happens sometimes during certain times that we miss because we're looking at the human story a lot of times. And as a result of looking at the human story, sometimes we don't see the spiritual story that's happening. And like I said, this is a wonderful time for renewal. You know, so many people are focused on destruction and what they're losing, and the funds that are being lost and things like that, and the time that is being lost, and I'm gonna lose the summer. We're not gonna be able to have fun this summer, and things like that, and not recognizing that nothing lasts forever. Everything has an expiration date. Everything, even your relationships, they all have an expiration date. So if you're able to experience a renewal and embrace what comes next, that may be a great thing. But of course, you want to be able to ride it with some sanity. And one of the things to ride in this season is like having now the opportunity to maybe use the pressure or the concern of not having certain things, maybe to strike out on your own entrepreneurial pursuits, if that's something you've considered while you have the opportunity. Because there'll come a time when certain things that you can do now, even now, seeds, go try to buy seeds. Go to the popular seed websites. I won't list any of them, but you could just do a search, heirloom seeds, and just see what happens. Go to all the popular ones. Well, go to 4 of them. Go to your first page results. Go to 4 or 5 of them, and look at the message that's on top of all of them. So, things like buying seeds that we may have taken for granted at one point, or being able to go and do a little, start your own business, to have a little hustle, or to plant some food, or to purchase some form of defensive measure for your home and for your family. Some of those things, or even to file paperwork to open up a business. Some of those things may not be as available to us in coming months as they have been in years gone past. So it's just a really important time in that sense. I didn't want to really speak on it for too long, but it's just kind of a really important time for us to look at some of the beautiful things that are happening, the opportunities and the possibilities for renewal that are in front of us. And also, like I said before, this place doesn't let any crisis go to waste. It's going to be utilized for something. So it's important to recognize, like, when things like tracking or positioning apps come out. I'm trying not to use certain terminology, but when positioning apps and things like that come out, that can be installed in your phone, which is pretty much they have you anyway. I'm going to speak on that a little bit down the road, but we look at some of the amazing work of the NSA and their ability to capture and retain information is it's awe-striking. I mean, I remember one of the CEOs of Google had said once that the entire span of human history as we know it could be fit inside of 5 exabytes of data. That's pretty amazing, if you think about it. It also goes to show how we don't really have as much documented history as we do, but I mean, 5 exabytes and you got everything, right? So when you look at an organization like the NSA that captures approximately 80% of all transmissions, video and audio, that are transmitted across the world. See, people think it's just certain trigger terms. You say certain terms and then they capture it. 80%. they can recall, with going back 12 months, and for certain people obviously even longer. It's pretty amazing when you think about the amount of resources and technical innovation that goes into that level of keeping up with people. And the truth is, organizations like that, which we're told they're about finding and preventing the acts of certain horrible people who would cause horror in the world, the reality is what they're really about is just being able to position and map and observe and keep individuals under surveillance. And sometimes they get a little help from social media, and then from maybe a situation like this again, where some type of opportunity comes where a person can be positioned digitally by their own volition, happy to do it, happy to give it, and that helps, of course, to add into that 80% of data that is captured. But like I said, it's a very interesting time. Here is a very spiritual thing, and to see certain people talking about hair. Hair is a very spiritual thing, and to see certain people embracing that, it shouldn't be ignored. A woman's hair is a glory to her, and it represents the untamed power of the Creator's judgment. And that's one of the reasons why it's covered. And part of that judgment, it sometimes can be so forceful and so powerful that it can even spark a sexual reaction. And so when she's covering her hair every day, especially a wedded woman, because the power and the glory that is for her man, when she's covering her hair every day, what she's in fact doing is maintaining the strength of the Creator's judgments. Yeah. And then when a man is maintaining and grooming his hair, I know in some traditions we really advocate the wildness of a man in terms of his hair and stuff like that. But and I knew we don't. That shouldn't happen, because when he is maintaining that, he's actually self-taming himself. He's self-managing, self-controlling by the removal of hair, because hair again represents, and not just represents, it actually channels that particular energy. You think about when it comes to hair, and like I said, even the memes and some of the jokes that people have been making, because you've had men who are over 40 years old, some over 50, who are not putting dye on their faces anymore, or their hair tops, and allowing their hair to grow and allowing their masculinity to show. That's something we should make fun of, because a man is allowing his masculinity to show outwardly. And of course, what we see outwardly represents judgment. So a lot of times men have a lot of trepidation and fear and nervousness around the guilt that comes from the judgment of their crown. And the utmost crown of any man or any woman is their hair. The hair is the crown. So sometimes maybe the way a man's hair is, the color or the length or whatever, or the aging of it, he may feel, again, certain guilt about that, which is all really, it's a spiritual oppression to feel that. That's when you have demonic energies riding you. And so then he'll start doing things like dyeing his hair, or wearing toupees, or getting weaves and things like that, and distorting his crown because of the fear of judgment. So that crown is representative of divine judgment. And then you have women who do similar, be out of their unwillingness to hold judgment, to hold the reality of judgment. And that happens because of many different reasons. But like I said, I'm just enjoying this opportunity to see individuals embrace the judgment, and I think on a subconscious level, commemorate that spirit of Omer when we are not cutting our hair, out of commemoration for those who at one point treated each other unjustly and, as a result, perished. So, there's always a lot of things to pay attention to, and my job is to expose those things, and for people who are inside of Anu and closer to sometimes put their face in it. Look, eat it. That's always the job of a chief. A lot of times is to get you to do the things that you may not want to do. And it's like that parent that reminds you, I'm not your friend. So that's part of what I'm here to do. So yeah, like I said, I think it's just very beautiful to see that. And I'm sure many of you have probably followed suit, and you may be aware of the time of Omer and what that represents. And you may be also aware that a woman should cover her hair and a man should groom his hair. You may also be aware of that, and that it is best for a man to have a beard. You may be aware of that as well. Speaking of which, speaking of such, one of my our new partners from across the sea is calling me on WhatsApp right now. All right, so I'm going to take this call, and all of you, be safe and please stay wise and stay balanced and righteous, like I know you will. All right, peace. Chief Yuya out.